Hi, everyone, and welcome to Moonlit Scary Stories. We are your hosts, Cameron and Skylar, and today we are going to be talking to you about the Charlie Lawson family, a story that is near to us because we grew up in this area and heard about it as we grew up.
In this podcast, we need to warn you of the possibility of language that may not be appropriate for all ages, and some may be offensive. The content we go over in this podcast is recommended for mature audiences and a trigger warning due to the content consisting of murder, child and infant death, incest, and ghosts. So, to begin, I would like to tell you guys a little bit about Stokes County, the history of it. It's a small rural county located in what was known, and hopefully still is known as Tobacco County. Back in the day, almost every farm and farmer had tobacco farms on it, and or either whoever was in the county helped own a tobacco farm. Personally, my parents did it when I was little, so I remember passing fields of tobacco, getting behind tractors that had trailers of tobacco on it. So it was a predominantly tobacco county. One of the most uh, reputable tobacco farmer was named Charlie Lawson. He was one of those that, you know, farmed tobacco and had a story after. So, Cameron, why don't you tell us about Charlie Lawson family?
So, this story is from 1929. Charlie Lawson was a 43-year-old married man with 7 children. He was a tobacco farmer, as Schuyler mentioned, in Germantown, North Carolina, and no one in the community could have predicted the awful end to his family. On Christmas Day, 1929, Charlie and his eldest son, Arthur, had been hunting. They had ran out of bullets, or so Charlie had made it seem. So he sent Arthur into town. Now, the story I always heard, and I don't know if it's the same for you, Skylar, was that Arthur had to and walk to get to the town, and the river was high, which took him longer than usual, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why he was spared in the killings. I also heard that Arthur had been standing up to his father in the recent times, and this was due to him getting too rough with his mother, and Charlie could not take Arthur anymore because he was almost a grown man, and knew he'd have to get him out of his way if he wanted to commit the crime that he was about to commit. This is just word of mouth I heard from a few of my family members as well as friends of the family. So if anyone listening has anything to add or change, just hit us up and we will correct it in the next podcast. Anyways, back to the story. Charlie had ammunition on him still, and while Arthur was gone, he began killing his family. His first victims were his young girls, Carrie and Mabel. He shot them and then beat them repeatedly, which I'm not sure why he needed to beat them because he shot them with a 12 gauge shotgun.
Mm,
So it seems like overkill.
yeah.
The next was his wife, Fanny, who was said to have been sitting on the front porch when he shot her. Mark and Oh my god. And Marie and his 2 youngest sons, James and Raymond, were inside when he shot them. It was said that the young boys had even attempted to hide when they had heard the gunshots and saw their sister get shot in the house. Charlie then beat Mary Lou, the infant, until she was dead. I'm not sure why he couldn't just shoot her as well to get that over with instead of torturing the child. After this, it is said that Charlie moved all of their bodies, placed rocks under each of their heads, and crossed their arms. So the next bit, I've heard different versions growing up, so I'm not sure which is the truth. So again, correct us if we're wrong. One version I heard was that he had waited in the house for Arthur to return but couldn't wait any longer and shot himself. The other version, which I saw predominantly as I was reading as well, was that Charlie went back into the woods where they found him later after he committed suicide by shooting himself. I had heard that also with that version that The family had already discovered the bodies. Arthur was home and they heard the final shot, which killed Charlie, and that was how they were able to find him. But I'm not sure if that version's true either. Another version said that Arthur found the bodies, while another said family had come to visit and they were the ones that found the bodies and they had sent for Arthur to get picked up. Again, I'm not sure which of these versions are more accurate, but there is a book called White Christmas, Bloody Christmas by Trudy J. Smith. It's the book that I read when I was very young. I had to borrow a copy from a family friend because these books were so scarce. Like you could not buy them anywhere. Anyone who had them had it had been passed down to them, and these books weren't getting made anymore. I know that was like 20 some years ago when I read that book. But when we were in high school, I don't know if you remember this, Skylar, but we had a friend who was like super into the story, like had the original book.
Yeah, I remember.
Apparently, they reprinted the book, or either another
Mm-hmm.
book was made. I can't remember which one. And she ended up with that copy too. She even got that copy signed by a friend of the family that she had met. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
Mm-hmm.
this lady was like 100 years old and she had met her and got her signature on the book and everything, even though it wasn't a family member, it was just a friend of the family. But anyways, you guys, if you can get a copy of this book or borrow it, I would recommend it. Even back then, I know that it was in the library, the local library. I think it was in Danbury. The actually take it out of the library. Like it wasn't a book you could borrow. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
remember that, Tyler.
Yeah, I do.
Um, anyways, this story remains a mystery as to why Charlie Lawson killed his family. When they found his body, it was said that there was letters in his on his person, but that none of those letters actually said why he had done it. Um, so let's go into some of these theories that are out there. The first theory I remember hearing about was that Charlie had a head injury. So I remember the story was that Charlie was working on his farm and was using a tool and somehow hit himself in the head with this tool. And he had suffered from headaches after this and had went to the doctor, but I also heard that he was cleared medically. And when they did the autopsy on his body, they didn't find any reason to suspect trauma. But a lot of people believe that this injury is the reason he killed his family, and they believe that it was what changed him mentally after that. The second and most disturbing theory was that Charlie had gotten his eldest daughter, Marie, pregnant. It is even told that Marie had confided in her friend that her father had gotten her pregnant, and he and her mother, Fanny, knew about the pregnancy, and also that there were other people in the area that knew about this pregnancy. Um, but my problem with this theory is that if he was trying to hide it by killing his whole family, why did people know about it already? Why, if that was a concern and people already knew about it, why would that be the reason why you kill your family? Because everyone knows, or at least some people know, and it's going to spread, which it did. After the murders and everything, this became a big story and a big topic as to why he killed his family.
Mm.
Um, Also, why, if people knew about this, didn't anyone say or do anything about this incestual relationship with an underage child?
Yeah, because
But
we both know that i- if it happened today, it would be all over the news, and it would be bad.
yeah, they would face jail time. But I guess back then, people were getting married at 13, 14 years old because I know my
Mm.
great grandparents were married at like 14 years old. So,
Oh
but
yeah.
still incest. So I'm not sure. I don't know much about how that went down in the earlier days, but it definitely would not be acceptable today. But he had basically killed his whole family to cover up his problems that he created in this theory. The third theory is that Charlie did not kill his family, but there wasn't much to back up this theory. It was pretty evident that Charlie himself did commit these murders. Um, and I don't think that there's anything that points to an outside job. Like it was done with his own gun, his own bullets, and then he had prepared the bodies. So one of the biggest things is they always talk about is how, if the person was close to them or remorseful or anything like that, they would treat the bodies with a different kind of respect. And it was set up that way with the rock under their head and their arms crossed, like he took care of their bodies. He didn't take care of them while he was killing them because he was also beating them after or beating them to death. But it looked like he actually cared about the bodies and how they were presented. So I don't believe that that one's true. Which theory do you buy, Skylar, and why?
I think, I mean, from what I heard, it is like from what I heard from family members, because my, I don't know if you know this, but my grandfather, my grandma, her brother actually helped dig the mass grave because they had to get all these people from the community to help, and he helped bury them, but he always talked about that, or she always talked about that he pretty much went crazy. He went mad. He hit his head on that tool or item, and then he was working at a hog farm. One claim was, and then he just went crazy. That's what I mean. That's what I've heard throughout the years. So, I mean, I think I'll stick with the he went mad. He went crazy.
I can see that, but all of the evidence afterwards just kind of seems like, and I think he did go a little crazy, but I don't think it was because of a head injury. I buy the second theory, which was that he got his daughter pregnant. Because why would the best friend make up that story, and why would other members of the community share that as well? Um,
Yeah.
it, I mean, I just don't see the gain in that and making up that story, especially the young girl who was friends with the daughter. Like, I just don't see someone making that up, but I could be wrong. You never know. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so I also heard Charlie wanted to die and take his family with him. He didn't want to leave them behind, but he also didn't want to be here anymore alive. Um, so I'm not sure if he thought that he was taking his family to heaven or what, because in Christianity, the way I was taught, not saying that I believe it, but if you kill yourself, you don't get into heaven. That's what I was always taught growing up, as that was a sin and there was no going back on that and there was no entrance to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not saying that I agree with that, but it is something that was, you know, kind of ingrained in us as we were growing up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A few more facts. Marie had made a cake that day. Um, I'm not sure if she was still making it when she was murdered, but they had used that cake and put it on display when his family members had set the house up as a tourist attraction. But people, like my dad told me when he would tell me this story, he told me that it was rumored that people would still, it was a raisin cake, so people would steal raisins off of it that were visiting it as a souvenir to keep. And so they took it off a display, but eventually the house was torn down and the wood was used to make a private bridge, but I'm not sure if the bridge is still up. In the graveyards where they are buried is a private property. But I know we spent a lot of our time as teenagers trying to find the bridge and trying to find the graveyards. How many graveyards did we go to before we
Oh
found the right
God.
one?
Like 4 or 5, I think, because I mean, at that time we were young. We didn't want to research it, but I think as we got older, we researched it and actually was like, okay, this is where it's at. Let's go.
Well, the only options we had as we were younger was freaking dial up. So it took a while before we even got good internet or were
Yeah.
able to research where it was. There was so many conflicting stories too that would tell you it's over here and it wasn't over there. So um but we eventually found it. But it is on private property, guys. So just be aware of that. There are a lot of photos online of the home, the family, and the graves. So you don't necessarily need to go to the grave site to get the picture of what the tombstones look like. Another odd tidbit is Charlie had gotten his family all dressed up the day before to have a family photo taken, which you can also find online. But this was said to have not been common in these times because of his economic status. He was not a wealthy man. So, buying really nice clothes and going to get your picture taken in his economic status was not something that actually occurred. This was just odd to happen. So it seems like he maybe had this planned out way beyond when he did it. Like maybe he even picked Christmas Day on purpose, but he definitely knew the day before. Um, or so it seems that he would have known the day before. Um, so my last topic is the topic of Arthur Lawson and what happened to him. It is said that Arthur went on, got married, and had children, but died at an early age, and it was a car accident that had killed him. So none of these family members had a great, like, no one lived till their old age to die happily in their bed. This was just a very tragic story all around for the entire family, including Arthur, who had to spend the remainder of his life um, thinking about his family that was killed and his father and why. And I mean, maybe
Yeah,
he
and
knew why.
I don't know about you, Cameron, but my grandma also told me that um, there's a room. I don't know. This is a rumor, but um, that that Arthur died um, so many years later on Christmas too. In front of, I guess, in the town he was going to when he did get the bullet, when he was sent to get the ammo. Um, but I don't know. I think we did find out that it wasn't true.
Yeah, I was told that too. I'm pretty sure my dad had told me that as well. But it turned out when we were looking things up that he actually died in May and not not December and definitely not Christmas. But I think that might have been something that was added to the story to make it more spooky. Like, oh, he died the same day. How eerie. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't accurate. All right, guys. So that's the end of my part of the story. Skylar's about to make it a little more interesting and add some ghostliness to it. Take it away.
Yeah. So, uh, the Lawson family murders that Cameron told us about, I didn't find a lot of research that was different about the ghost stories. The ghost story is called The Wandering Man. It's kind of like um, the Lady in White ghost story, hitchhiking story. So it's in which I'm excited to talk about that, but that's going to be in a different podcast. But the author in Ghost Stories of a Ghost of a Blog, Dale Young, stated that it had been said that Charlie Lawson's crimes were so horrible that his soul is not even welcome in hell. As a result, some local residents say that his ghost still wanders the road, Brook Cove Road in Stokes County, which is near the place of his farm that was once located. Um, a man has to be pretty evil when even the devil won't take his soul. There is a fun fact, there is a short song about Mr. Lawson. If you'd like to listen to it, you can Google search the story of the Lawson family by Stanley Brothers. Um, some of the lyrics are incorrect, but that's one of the songs, like the book, that will live in history forever. with Charlie Lawson family murders. Um, so it said, drive down Brook Cove Road. There will be a man wandering. My take, I know I did not haven't seen anybody walking the road, but granted that could have been just that one instance that he didn't. But some people do say, there's a man walking on Brook Cove Road. I don't know um, what happens if you stop and pick him up. I don't know if you stop and talk to him. I have no idea. But from other people, talking about it, they would say somebody's walking down the road or something. One of somebody's just, hunting for the grave site or the farm site. Um,
Yeah, we
I
never
didn't do
ran
that.
into that.
Yeah,
We were on those roads a
I,
lot looking for stuff, and we never ran into that.
yeah, exactly. Like there's some instances where we went, and we'll talk about this in another podcast, Payne Road. And, that actually, that's one of the stories that I can contest to. But,
Yeah.
um, with this one, adding over the years in Stokes and surrounding areas, just rumors and everything has spread about what really drove him to commit this horrific mass murder in North Carolina history, on Christmas Day, of all things. So, along with the rumors Cameron talked about, it is to be said that after killing his baby, he placed it underneath a wood stove, and it was later recovered. And they actually placed it in the mother's arms when they dug the mass grave and buried the family. That is located in a small cemetery outside of Walnut Cove. And like Cameron has said, I can't stress this enough. It is private property, no trespassing. So, and the pictures are online. You can you can go see it if you want. I'm not saying don't, but if you do go, it's gonna feel different. Because when we were there, I don't know about you, Cameron, but I felt it was just different atmosphere because it's said to the that the no that no leaves will fall on the grave site, and leaves will fall around the grave, but not on the grave. And what's funny is that it's encased in trees, um, in the woods. So it's kind of eerie to know that no leaves are going to fall on that grave, and it hasn't fell on that grave.
Yeah, because it's
Especially
in literally in the middle of the woods.
yeah, yeah. So um, and also in my experience when we did go to the grave site and taking pictures, granted it wasn't high tech back then, so the photos did show like small orbs or what you could call dust particles or something like that. But the air and the just like looking seemed calm.
Clear.
So I mean, really, other than that, with the Wandering Man, it you know it could happen. I'm not saying it hasn't. It could have happened. But the other thing is that people would like to go find the house location. And my mom's best friend talked about how her and her fiance went one time, and it was in the middle of the night, of course, so dark and eerie, spooky. Your adrenaline's up, and they said that they went to the site, and it was just the steps of the house that was still there. Because they had taken down the house, they had made it into a bridge. I think they've taken down the bridge because people had been wanting to go on the bridge and see if something would happen. You know, just little legends and stuff. But she said her and her fiance went to the steps and sat down, and you could feel the energy and feel the change of just it was just really eerie to them. Um, you they could probably hear stuff and everything, but that's pretty much all for that. But
Yeah, we never found the steps, but we looked. We tried to find
yeah,
the site where the home was, and we never found the steps. But I do remember, a friend of the family also saying that they had went, and the only thing that was left was the steps, and that's just to me that's just weird in itself. the energy they might have felt could have been just them hyping themselves up, because every time we ever did anything like this, like our energy was always pumping. We were ready to
Hmm.
run. Half the time we ran away because something like a twig broke in the woods or something and scared us. So
Yeah,
it
that's
could
true.
be it could be the feeling for real in the atmosphere, or it could be just their overall um, anxiety for being there. But
Yeah,
makes a good story either way.
yeah, and really, it comes down to the only person that really knows the truth of why he murdered his whole family is the infamous Charlie Lawson himself. Um, so if you really want to take a drive down Brook Cove Road, um, and just see what you might find the Wandering Man and ask him yourself. You never know.
Well, all right, everyone. That's our podcast for the day. Be sure to tune in next Friday for another scary story. And don't forget to find us on Twitter at Moonlit Scary. We couldn't fit the whole Moonlit Scary Stories on there. Instagram, we're at Moonlit Scary Stories, and our citations will be uploaded as well. Leave us a review. Email us at moonlitscarystories@gmail.com. Message us on Twitter or Instagram. Um, we love constructive criticism, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hmm.
Like we said in the beginning or early on in the show, if you have anything to add or to, edit for us, tell us, and we will, add it to the next show before we start telling the next story. But that's it, guys, and we thank you for listening and hope you come back.
All right.